up, car gang? It's been a while. It has been a long time. But I assure you that I have something very, very good to learn today, as are all the things I teach you guys. Today, we're going to be learning about something a little different. We learned how the engine works, we learned how brakes work, and I remember telling you guys about valves and how you want to get air and gasoline into the engine. And today we're going to look how air gets into the engine and how air gets out of the engine. We're going to be learning about intake and exhaust. So, let's start this out. Let me just do this drawing here. I'm not very good at drawing. I probably should have done my drawings beforehand, but I'm in the car, I can't. So here, this would be our intake process. This right here is the air scoop. Usually it's just, there's a little tiny scoop inside your engine if you ever open the hood, which I doubt you guys do. This is where air goes in. Then it goes through this here. This is the air filter, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Filters air. Sometimes they're made out of like organic materials, sometimes it's paper. And it's good to get this every once in a while and read. There's a label on it. They'll tell you how to clean it. It's good to clean it because, especially in Scottsdale, Nebraska, it gets super dusty. Sometimes it's clogged up with dirt. Won't run very good. So then it goes through this little tube into this little thing here called the throttle body. The throttle body lets it, depending on how much load the engine's taking, if it's revving high or revving low, this will let in an appropriate amount of air. Then it'll send it down into this intake manifold, or sometimes known as an intake plenum, which lets it go down into the engine itself. And I'll explain each of this part and this part and this, how they really, more importantly, right now. Do I have something nope, we're racing with my finger today, guys. So, Brisa, I hear you're moving to Lincoln. That's exciting. Tell me how that is. Tell me how it is with Delaney, and how it is trying to become a doctor. Let me just draw this out here real quick. So this here will be the throttle body. It's receiving air directly from the air filter, and this little thing here is the actual throttle body itself. So this thing right here is like is a valve. So if this is the front of the engine, it opens up like this. This is how it goes. When it's full, it never fully goes flat like this. It's just at a tiny angle. And when it's at this, it's letting in the least amount of air. That means like your foot's off the gas. It's at what is known as idle. The engine's idling. It's just sitting at its idle RPM, whether that's 500, 1000, whatever. And when it's full open, that's full throttle, which means you're flooring it. It's letting in as much air as possible. Now it actually is slightly off center like this, and it goes from a skinny opening to wider, in order to help get air to the back here, because this has there's small holes in it, or no, that's to help air rush in faster, so that air has a constant flow, because it wants to keep its speed here and shoot out there, and not enough space to lose the pressure, but enough to make air faster and accelerate it faster, so you get air in faster. So now we'll go on to the next thing, which is known as the intake manifold or intake plenum. So that view was from the top. We're going to pretend we're looking at this from the side. So this here is the intake manifold. Now let me draw something here. So, let me get you a little more drawing. So this here is the throttle body. This is the intake manifold or intake plenum. And this right here is the cylinder, and this little thing right here is the valve, as you might remember. Hold on a second. I was hoping I wasn't in camera there. So it comes from the throttle body. Remember, it's going faster, and this it also closes off so that air is accelerating faster. Because the problem with throttle bodies is making sure that air gets to the cylinders at the back, because it's easy to get them at the front because that's where it's coming from. But it's hard to make sure that there's an equal amount of air going into all the cylinders, whether that's 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12. So that's why it has a closed off thing to keep the air accelerating all the way to the back. So it's sent downward from the throttle body into the intake manifold, and then there's 8 individual openings for the 8 individual cylinders, or 6 or 8 depending on how much cylinders your engine has. Air rushes down into this little space here. I'm not sure what this space is called. It's the little space where this here will be opened by the camshaft. It'll go down. Ooh, that was good. And air will rush in here to mix with oxygen and fuel. And that is your basic process of intake. There's some engines that don't have throttle bodies that I don't quite get. I don't quite get how that works. So next we have exhaust. Let me draw a little cylinder here. So once we've combusted the air and fuel, we have to find a way to get that combusted air out. And that is a process known as exhaust. So those exhaust gases, they're not good. We want them out. So when the piston pushes back up for what's known as the exhaust stroke, there's 2 valves. There's usually, every engine ever made has at least 2 valves per cylinder. Some have 4. I've seen some with like 5 or 6 valves per cylinder, like 3 intake valves, 2 exhaust valves. So this one here, the intake valve will open. It'll let air and maybe gas, depending on what your fuel delivery system is. That's tomorrow's video. That'll open, let those in. And then this will open when it's time for the exhaust to escape. This will open, this will come out, and it'll push the exhaust gas through here. So let me make a second drawing. Alright, so here's an above drawing of it. So if we have our basic inline 4-cylinder engine, the 2 outside ones will always have their exhaust flowing through there and through there. And then we'll have the 2 inside ones flowing there through there. If it's a V engine, then all 4 on one side will go into one side here. The 4 from the other side will go on one side here. And this little section here is known as the exhaust manifold. Intake manifold, exhaust manifold. And also, important thing to note, the exhaust leaving, it actually creates a vacuum for air to fill in to help to help the intake process pull in more air. The exhaust, the movement of the pistons and the exhaust going out creates that vacuum. And that's how that works. So you want to optimize the amount of pressure you have on the back end through exhaust, and in order to get the most air into your engine. So that is very important. So once it all meets here, there's a few things that need to happen. Of course, we care about the environment. So the government requires cars to only put out a certain amount of emissions depending on what type of vehicle. Like vehicles that weigh over certain amounts could put out a little more. Vehicles with like a certain amount of seats, like there's a bunch of ways to allow more, but the goal is always to reduce that amount. So there's also noise restrictions. You can't make noise, all right? They don't like noise. I like it. Most people do. But alas, it's not the way to go for most. So it goes through several processes. Let me just draw you an intake manifold. So the first process it goes through is the catalytic converter. So there's this thing called what's called a pre-cat, and this, which is your main cat. And so the exhaust gases come here, they meet in the middle, and a catalytic converter, it has chemicals on the end that actually help remove about 80% of the harmful emissions that are actually put out by your car's engine. So even though cars do pollute, I mean, not a lot in comparison to other things, but quite a bit, these help remove way more. So it goes through this pre-cat, because here's the thing: when you first start your car, the exhaust gases, they aren't as hot, and in order for the catalytic converter to be more effective, you want it to be hot. So, but the thing is, if you make it smaller to accommodate the colder temperature, it's really restrictive at higher RPMs. So what ends up happening is you get a smaller one right here for your first one. This is able to collect more gases at lower temperatures when it hasn't heated up as much, in order to get rid of emissions at startup, because they measure your emissions not just when the car is fully warmed up, but also when you've just started the engine. So this helps get rid of it before. And then most vehicles have some mechanism that widens the opening on both ends here, so that it has a more even flow once it warms up to the main catalytic converter. Now these things are very expensive. Like I could just take a saw and cut the one off my truck and sell it for probably $1,000. The chemicals in them are very specialized, very advanced. So after that, there's another thing. So here, this next drawing is from the catalytic converter, and this is the boring device. I call this the boring machine. The muffler. So here we got two things going out of the cat, and it goes into here, the muffler. The muffler has these little chambers. And this helps, like, the exhaust gas, they're not enough to, like, restrict flow of the end of the exhaust gas as much, but, like, it wants to take a nice, good path here, but a lot of the noise gets trapped in these chambers, which makes your engine quieter. So now we get to talk about something a little fun: straight piping. There's a few ways to make your car sound cooler. Now, the cheapest way, and by cheap I mean almost completely free if you already have a saw on hand, is to straight pipe. What you do when you straight pipe is you get a jack, you push your car up, you go underneath, you find the muffler, you see your muffler, there it is, you get your saw, chop off that muffler. Sometimes you could also cut off the catalytic converter, cut it all the way down to the intake manifold even, and it makes it sound super aggressive. I'm personally not a fan of the straight pipe sound. It just sounds a little like uncivilized and raw. So there are more expensive ways to your engine sound cool while remaining emissions compliant. Because its essence, your engine's basically just a musical instrument. So some ways to do it are, so let's say you have two pipes. So after they meet at the intake manifold, you have all your components, you know, cap, pre-cap, muffler, all right here. And when they take this path right here, this is called an H pipe. And it makes it sound, you know, very distinctive, kind of odd. H pipes are cool. And then there's so many ways. These are just the most common ones that I know. One of the weirdest ways I've seen is...
We found him the cutest stuff.
You did?
You should go in. Have you ever been in there?
Yeah.
We've got the cutest little things in there. We got him 2 little outfits, and I bought him,
So this isn't very good, but this is what's known as the Helix pipe. That's my mom right there. You guys know my mom. So I just drew it like overlapping, but the 2 pipes, or 4 if you have them, or hell 3, who cares? They're twisted together, and that makes them clank against each other almost.
Yes.
And it makes this really weird sound.
Huh?
I don't know about it. But that's just some fun stuff. You now know it's exhaust. Bye, guys.
You need me to go in there?